So, are you now ready? We're moving from Web2 to Web3. So, Alex, the stage is yours.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us. First of all, please give a round of applause to our panelists. Hopefully, together, we're going to decipher what Web3 is for all of us, and what the future potentially holds, and how are we finally going to transition from Web2 to Web3. So I'm Alex, managing editor of Cointelegraph. Hopefully, it's your go-to source for all of your crypto news. And now, what I'd like to pass it on to you, and perhaps you could introduce yourself, each one of you, and then explain what Web3 is for all of you, one by one. Well, please, Monty.
So my name is Monty Metzger. I'm founder and CEO at LCX.com. We're a regulated fintech company out of Liechtenstein. We're leveraging the blockchain laws over there and got 8 registrations, blockchain-related licenses, who are giving us the opportunity to do a variety of services, including a crypto exchange, a token issuance platform. We have a DEX aggregator, and we've recently launched Diamonds as a tokenized diamonds platform for within NFT marketplace. So that's all about LCX. Go sign up. We launched a mobile app today. Big milestone for us.
Congrats. Toya, over to you.
So I guess we'll just introduce ourselves first before answering the question. So my name is Toya Zhang. I'm the CMO of Bit.com. Bit.com is a cryptocurrency exchange. We're specialized in crypto options trading. You may wonder why, like in crypto exchange, talking about a Web3, because we're from Matrix Port family, which has different business unit, including crypto bank, ventures, asset management. Well, of course, exchange business. We're quite deep-rooted in this space. And I look forward to exploring the frontier of this space as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Diederik van Wersch. I'm a sales manager at Chainalysis. Chainalysis is the leading blockchain analytics firm in this space. So basically, we're able to decipher who is who on the blockchain, which addresses belong to which services, whether they're good or bad. And we're able to offer investigatory and anti-money laundering services to law enforcement, financial institutions, and cryptocurrency businesses like a lot of the fine people in the room today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Hi, I'm Robert Ellison. I work for Figment. Figment is an institutional staking provider. So we support about 60 proof-of-stake protocols. One of the interesting things about Figment is we have a protocol research team. So we're very knowledge-driven in terms of educating the space.
Thank you, everyone. And I guess we can come back to you, Monty, regarding the first question. Can you give us an overview? What is Web3 for you?
Yes, so we've been through the cycles of the internet. So the first generation promised to be a decentralized web where we get access to the information. So it was the age of information. We've now entering the age of value, the internet of value. And so Web3 for us is really this third generation of the internet, which combines 3 key elements. So one is really a decentralized ownership. You have a stake in the company or in the project. Third is rewards. So you're rewarding actions within the network. And third is the governance structures, so that you actually control it in a decentralized manner.
Thank you, Monty. So I would like to describe the evolution of Web 1, Web 2, Web 3 in comparison with the evolution of media. So when we are going through the newspaper, television, and internet. So the evolution of media is not merely the evolution of the medium, it's also the evolution of the business model. So think about the fact that when music is digitalized, it affects how we sell the music, same as the film. A good example would be how Netflix has been transforming their business from physical delivering cassettes into like stream media content producer. So in terms of business model change, Web 1 was about monetizing the traffic. Web 2 was about monetizing, of course, the traffic, but also users' data. Some of them also monetize on their service as well. So for Web 3, it will be everyone monetizing their contributions to the internet, to put that into a very simple way. One tangible example, because we're still in the very early stage, so kind of limit my imagination of how things could be. But one example could be like the TikTok video producers getting rewards from the pre-written protocols instead of from TikTok, the platform. So just one example around here, yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so for me, Web3 is about taking the centralized internet as we know it and moving it over to a decentralized network of services in which individual participants own part of the network. And what I see it as about is also taking the principles and philosophy that's been driving Bitcoin and cryptocurrency generally over the past decade or so and applying it to the internet at large. When Satoshi wrote his initial white paper, it was taken for granted that the money supply, how it's distributed, how transactions are processed, who holds it, that would be done in a centralized manner. But Satoshi came along and said, no, it doesn't actually have to be this way. We can have a decentralized mechanism to distribute the money supply that can be open for the world to see. We can have a decentralized mechanism to process the transactions, and individual users can own part of the network. Individual users can be their own banks. What Web3 is about is taking those same fundamental principles and applying it to different use cases, like in the world of art with NFTs, in the world of businesses with DAOs, or in the world of tokenization with taking physical assets like cars and real estate. So that's what's exciting about it to me, taking things like censorship resistance, taking things like ownership, peer-to-peer, and most importantly, decentralization, applying it to the world at large. That's what Web3 is really about.
Thank you. Yeah. So I agree with most of my colleagues. I think a lot of us are in it for the same reasons. But maybe if we take a step back and think, like, at least for older people who are a part of Web 1, how did we diverge into Web 2? Like, how did this happen? I think there's a sort of feeling that things went sideways. And Web 2 came along like a bulldozer in some ways and got taken over from the fundamentals of how the internet was imagined. And so I think Web3 is a lot about that. There's a social component to that. Is there an uneasiness with how we use the internet now? It seems strange sometimes. It seems out of our control. It seems like a vague uneasiness of what exactly are we doing. And so if we look at the information, right, being processed and at a protocol level, we have no attachment to that. Some protocols, even people are using them right now as I look around on their phones and cameras. Some of them are proprietary. We don't really have any sense of how they work or how they operate. And then if we look at a layer above that at applications being built on these protocols, they've been centralized, again, out of our control. And so how do we make more sense of this? How do we look at these layers and look at these protocols and be more involved? And so, yeah, that is part of governance, but that's a part of ownership too, because the honest truth is people don't get involved unless there's value attached to it. And so Web3 is very much about attaching value. There's sort of a saying of, you know, data is the new oil. So is that going to be a real thing? It sounds interesting. We could harvest all the data that everyone's using and actually get value out of it and then be a part of that. You know, we could be active participants. We could be passive participants. I don't know if it's better, but it's probably sounds better than what we're currently doing.
Actually, catching on to the point that you raised, do you think there's like an extra philosophical edge, for example, in comparison to the transition from Web 1 to Web 2? Because now, basically, Web 3 is all about sort of the blockchain, cryptocurrency-powered economies that give people the power, right? Do you think that basically what's behind it, the idea behind it gives it an extra kick?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an interesting case study to see how we went from pre-browser internet, which was very social. Like, you know, if anyone was on the internet back then, it was really just about communicating with people. You know, you couldn't browse or buy anything. And so how did Web 2 usher in? It was really about consumption, right? And big players started to control the marketplace without holding those fundamentals true. So there's like really founding principles, I would say, with Web 3, with consensus mechanism, with the decentralization, with how they're built and how they're governed, that is really drastically different.
And maybe, like, moving on the thought, do you think others outside of the crypto ecosystem are going to be enticed to join this kind of community-driven effort?
Yeah, I can take that. I mean, one really interesting area has been in the world of NFTs, because what that's really done is open up crypto or Web3 to a much broader base. I mean, it used to be that, you know, cryptocurrency, Web3, the fact that we're discussing it at all actually shows how much more prevalent it is. It used to be that to be quite a narrow group of people. That wasn't something that was known in everyday parlance. Even NFTs were something that was just a handful of esoterics were dealing with. Now, if you look about it, just about everyone is talking about NFTs constantly. I mean, what was it? Cristiano Ronaldo is now partnering with Binance. It's really entered into the mainstream, and that's exciting because, you know, people might have felt, okay, Bitcoin, DeFi, this is all a little bit too a bit too niche for me. But we have so many other use cases right now that are so much more applicable. I think there's still a lot of work to be done before it can fully take over Web3, before we really see it fully enter the mainstream and be part of our day-to-day life. But I think we're still in the infancy stage, but I'm very optimistic about the trajectory.
Just share a little bit about my thought, which may be a little bit of different than on this panel mainstream, the drive of Web3. Well, it sounds very good about everything decentralized, everything going back to what internet was designed about, peer-to-peer communication. But it's also driven by financial rewards, socialify, gamify, X to earn. So this is the simple idea that it can actually drive participants of the next round of evolution, right? So it also fits the nature of human being. Like users or participants used to be the consumer of internet, and now they're an owner of internet. But that's actually not the essence of what drives them to participate. It's actually the reward, gravitate them into this world. But it doesn't mean it's less fancy or less ideological. It only means it's real. It's so human nature, right?
Yeah, well, the ideology is, just before I go to you, the ideology is taken from the big guy and allowing the little guy, I don't know, some NFT, like artist in Brazil, to create an NFT and for him to go like public and become famous and to be able to earn and spread his art. So, for me, that's what it looks to be about. So, maybe you have kind of thoughts based on that.
I mean, if you look at the key players of Web 2, you see that we failed on so many levels in making this vision true of a decentralized internet, because we now have a lot of monopolies. Like we have monopolies in social networking, in payment services, which are centralized entities. And now with Web3 and blockchain technology and cryptos and tokens, we're actually making this vision a reality. And on top of that, what we've seen from the development right now until like the next 10 years is that we will probably have a 10x, 100x or larger growth opportunity there, because we can tokenize underlying assets, we can tokenize financial assets, or even going into other industries where we tokenize things like used in like healthcare, your health data things, or even assets like real estate, diamonds, what we are doing with diamonds.com. And so everything that can be tokenized will be tokenized. And Web3 is enabling this next growth wave of the crypto industry.
Okay, so talking about the next wave, obviously the name of the panel is the move from Web3 to Web2 to Web3. How do you think this move will happen? Will it be a revolution? Is it going to be an integration? Is there going to be a transition? And perhaps can you theorize how dramatic it's going to be? Let's start with you.
Yeah, it will be dramatic, that's for sure. we're still at the beginning. So every technology movement has these like life cycles. So it's a curve where you basically start until you reach a mass market, and then it drops down in attention or goes into kind of a mainstream adoption, really. And we are still early. I mean, with a few 100 million wallets which are active currently, we have not seen the billion user market yet. So I think that the adoption will happen, and the impact will be tremendous because it will enable access to monetary systems for people who have not a bank account or who are unbanked, meaning that they don't have access to loans or like global payment infrastructure. So this will be revolutionary. Also having access to new asset classes, investing in all different kind of financial products on a global level, because at the moment it's still all locked up in these different silos. So we will overcome this with a fully decentralized network. And then most importantly, I think for everybody involved, it's a big change because with the rewards, what you also mentioned, with like handing out rewards or gratitude, like saying thanks for contributing to the networks by giving them a token where they can use and do something with it or just swap it into currency again. This is incredibly powerful. So I have to disagree with what you said is the data is the new oil because that's Web2 thinking. Like oil won't be a topic in the future at all, and the data will go back to the users. So everybody will be empowered. All users who are in Web3 will be their own bank, their own data controller. They will be rewarded if they contribute. So I think for me, it's a very exciting, promising future ahead.
Yep, but users are going to be able to sell their own data. So in a way, data is still going to be, well, oil, if we use that terminology, but the power to sell that or distribute that information is going to go back to the person, not the, the Web2 company.
Exactly, that's the vision. What we see, like as a pragmatic approach, is that currently in Web2, you have all these logins. You have a login to Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, like all services you use. In Web3, your wallet will be your one identifier. You see that if you log in to Timens.com or OpenSea or like any NFT platform, the wallet connect is already making you, the wallet, the one ID you will be using. And this will be, in the future, even more a key element where you see how Web3 plays out.
Yeah. Back to the question, moving from Web2 to Web3, it's going to take process, in my point of view. It's not going to be a drastic change. First of all, there will be experiments like what we observe nowadays. The experiment of Web3 applications. There are sporadically some SocialFi projects coming up, GameFi or X2Earn projects. So they're testing the market. Is there a market demand in this? Does it really make sense? Does the economy model make sense? So this is the testing period of time. Well, first of all, it doesn't have to happen in this sequence. It can happen simultaneously. So the second step is infrastructure level. So the infrastructure needs to be ready. There are so many protocols nowadays. It's as annoying as so many logins of Facebook or Google logins because they can't communicate with each other. So the protocol war needs to have a winner, and then we have winners of the bridges because that's also a competition field. And then the third step would be we go out of the bear market, hopefully, and then money pumping into this field again, helping the projects for development, acquiring users, penetrate the market. And then the Web2 giants also developing into the Web3 area. We've probably already seen some of that. So they're going to accelerate the user acquisition. And then Web2 and Web3 is going to coexist, that they're going to compete with each other, or they're going to merge. So the same, back to the analogy that I made, it's the same as how news agents are tapping into the television or they're tapping into the internet. So they're going to adapt into Web3 as well. So, Web2 applications are going to adapt themselves in Web3. So there will be a balancing period of time. And then eventually there will be So we so-called explosion of Web3 applications. And it's not going to take as long as what Web2 experienced, because we also have the experience and know what users on the internet ask for. So this is the journey, pretty much, that in my imagination.
Just quick follow-up question. When we talk about the Web2 companies getting into Web3 and then Web3 companies kind of doing their own thing, do you think one particular has an advantage, a competitive advantage over the other? Because on one side, the Web2 companies have the money, but Web3 companies have the ideas and the young people and, you know, the community that, you know, we see here.
Well, that's a very good question. I think each side has their advantage, and we don't know which one has an absolute advantage. On the one side, the Web2 companies has the experience of the user experience. Like they know the service-driven approach, which is very essential for user acquisition. And the Web3 services, or the emerging ones, they know the token economies better, probably, than the existing ones. So it's going to be a market test. Yeah.
Thank you. Diederik.
Yeah, so in going from Web 2 to Web 3, you know, what needs to happen? There's a number of different ways you could answer this question. I think one thing that's going to need to happen, and one thing that we're more qualified to discuss, is there needs to be more trust in this industry and trust in Web 3 in general. So Chainalysis, we were started because our co-founder, when he was at another cryptocurrency exchange in 2014, couldn't get a banking license. And he realized that that's because this is a very low trust industry. And a lot of the early stories in crypto Web3's history, things like Mt. Gox, things like Silk Road, have tarnished the reputation of this industry to a lot of the mainstream, amount of the mainstream public. I think a lot of people here can relate. When you tell people you work in crypto, it's like, oh, that's cool, but let's be real, like the reason people use Bitcoin is for money laundering. And if you read the Chainalysis Crypto Crime Report, which we release every single year, it's the most comprehensive study on crime in this space, you'll find only 0.15% of all the activity on the blockchain is illicit. So we have to do a lot to dispel a lot of the myths around cryptocurrency, dispel a lot of the bad stories, and those do come up. Things like Luna obviously are going to shake trust in this industry. And we need to empower, let's say, law enforcement agencies, letting them know what the tools are at their disposal to catch criminals and catch illicit elements in the space, and letting them know, actually, Web3 is really actually fantastic when it comes to, let's say, catching criminals, when it comes to avoiding money laundering because of how public it is, letting them know all the benefits, and, you know, having people like my panelists on here today that are offering services in this space and letting them know the success stories, all the potentials here, and trying to do our best to dispel the negative myths here. If we can get more trust in this industry and dispel all the negative stories, I think a lot more people are going to be confident moving into it.
Do you think the crypto companies will need to kind of adjust the way they do things right now to make it more similar in terms of maybe reporting standards or transparency in order to, well, first of all, somehow merge with Web2 or overtake Web2? Because right now, as you pointed out, like, not many understand what crypto is. Like, they don't understand that it's a bad idea to siphon funds with Bitcoin because everyone can see it. Do you think there will be kind of a need to, yeah, kind of change the ways a little bit and adapt?
Yeah, so I mean, like you alluded to right there, I've always said if I was going to launder money, the last thing I'd ever want to use is Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency, because it's like you rob a bank and there's a GPS locator of where you are at any given moment. So I think what we need to have is a lot more education in this space, because oftentimes when I explain what we do at Chainalysis, especially to people at more, let's say, traditional financial institutions, regulators, they're really shocked that this is even possible. Sometimes they'll say, oh, I thought the whole point of crypto was that it's untraceable. It's like, well, no, it couldn't be further from the truth, actually. But so I actually find a lot of Web3 businesses, they very much want regulation. They very much want to abide by the highest anti-money laundering standards. And it's going to require a lot of education by people like us here in this room today to let the industry know of what's actually capable and know you don't need to be worried about the type of crime. And as we move into even within Web3, let's say more things, DeFi protocols, elements of that nature, we end up almost in more philosophical questions of, okay, on a DeFi protocol, who's actually responsible if funds are being laundered? You know, we're developing solutions on there. Regulators are having thinking about it, but I think I can see the industry headed in the right direction in that regard.
But it's also something where you see that the evolution of the industry is changing how products will be brought into the market. And especially with like blockchain analytics, for the first generation of crypto exchanges, it's hard to like go back and do all the back tracing of all the transactions. So for them, it will be hard to comply with future regulations like MiCA or the ones in Liechtenstein, for example, which are quite comprehensive, but still lightweight, so you can get the balance right between innovation and playing with the rules there. And so with that, it's will be the chance for new players coming out, a kind of a second generation of crypto exchanges, whether it's BIT or LCX or somebody else who are like reinventing and playing with the rules, trying to leverage these new technologies that are out there in terms of blockchain analytics. And so we have built a crypto compliance suite where we integrated blockchain analytics right from start, so that when every transaction is going in and out, trigger different risk rules to it, so we can actually already comply with the regulation which is coming up from MiCA. And I think that's the opportunity. You know, we've seen that in first evolution of Web2, there'd been Friendster and MySpace, but then the second generation took over, like Facebook, for example, really brought it to the mass market. And that's where we are right now. There are some players already, but the next growth wave will be driven by the new next generation.
Yeah, well, for sure, regulation is going to be a big issue. And Robert, do you think that that's what's going to impact the transition from Web2 to Web3? Or
yeah, I see that as, I call it the dam, right? So there's a lot of institutional players, especially on the financial side, that simply don't have that, there's simply uncertainty and risk in the market. And so they're looking towards regulations. And I guess the current market trend, we see that more than ever, right? And so, you know, based on what my colleagues said, there's a lot of education that needs to happen. So if you even look at the word staking, for example, which comes from proof of stake and it's sort of a core concept to how it operates, there's a lot of people who now use the word staking. You know, they could be providing lending platforms, liquidity, even insurance products and NFTs. It's not really staking, you know, they'll use the word, but it's not a fundamental thing. They're just balancing off their books, or they're just doing, you know, they're acting like a bank, right? So what's going to provide that certainty in the marketplace? It's going to be regulations. So there's sort of a balancing act of crypto wanting to be decentralized and you know, in the power of individuals, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't provide safety for human nature. So I think, you know, in some ways I'm looking forward to some regulations, but also being apprehensive because we want to get it right. You know, we want policymakers and politicians and anyone involved in that space to really understand what we're trying to accomplish. And really, you know, I guess what I'm saying is education is key at this moment, and it's going to take a lot of hard work.
So what would you be hoping for? International regulation that most of the countries would agree to, or like national, and then the countries would have to essentially run between countries and jurisdictions?
That's what we see now. We see certain countries who are much more advanced regulatory-wise, especially when it comes to custodying digital assets, frameworks. So, you know, I won't name specific countries, but, you know, you could certainly see that. And you even see the flow of startups moving to countries that are more crypto-friendly and have, you know, those regulatory safeguards. So it's almost competitive in some ways. You even see it at the city level. Which countries are more crypto-friendly, which cities are more crypto-friendly. So I think that's a big move that honestly we have to think about, yeah.
Thank you. Well, we don't have too long, so I would like to ask a final question. And what would you say is the main issue around the move to Web3 that we're currently fighting as a community and that we need to, well, overcome within the next few years? What's our kind of next step to make sure that we kind of get this Web3 future that we would like to see? Monty, if we can start with you.
So I think it's all about trust and trusted technology. According to Liechtenstein, they didn't call it blockchain laws. It's the trusted technology, how they call it, trusted technology service providers are registered. And I think this trust level is needed. If you look at things like what's happening with Celsius at the moment, they're offering kind of staking profits, but they actually, as you said, just rolled off from the balance sheet or created a different way. So they're acting like a financial player, like a bank, probably. So these things are highly regulated, so they're hiding behind these words of staking. So I think regulation might be something good for the industry because it might avoid these collapses and really bring clarity that the innovation is not stuck and not and could thrive, really. So that innovation and all these ideas around staking could be done the right way. And if there's somebody providing yield on products, you can do it, but then you have to just publish a prospectus, get it passported across Europe or other countries. You can do that. And I think now the knowledge is there. If I look in the audience, there are so many smart people. We can really bring that to the next level, and I think that could be the key to success.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think it's like in this panel we all focus on the regulation here. So actually the issues that Web3 is facing is not more or less than cryptocurrency or blockchain technology is facing. At this moment, it is unclear regulations, but it can be more because it's not just about finance. It's also about applications and different levels of applications. So you want global, borderless, seamless experience of the digital world. That also involves probably data sovereignty. Where does the data stored at, and who owns that? It takes time to evolve into kind of like self-governance thing. And also it's not just about each jurisdiction's regulation, it also probably involves different jurisdictions' competition in this. So I don't know how to mitigate, I don't have the answer of that, but it's very exciting because the adoption of Web3 is actually propelling the overhaul change of the social or political structure worldwide because it is firstly accessible globally and it's traceable globally and it's going to disrupt everything that we're familiar with at this moment. Yeah.
Yeah, so one area I'd be qualified to speak on here is regards to the risk going into Web3 is regards to crime in the space. So one thing, if you look at our State of Web3 report, another report we're releasing shortly on the state of Web3, one thing you'll see is that in Q2, I think of 2020, with DeFi, the volume of the value of the volume being transmitted was negligible, a few million. Cut to 1 year later, and it was nearly $4 trillion, which is an enormous increase, which is fantastic and really encouraging for the growth of this space. However, what we also saw was, I think in the last year, about a 2,000% increase in terms of the amount of illicit funds that were being laundered through DeFi platforms. On top of that, what we're also seeing is hacks used to happen almost exclusively on centralized exchanges. Now, if you look at Q2 of 2022, you're seeing that nearly 100% of all hacks have occurred on DeFi platforms. So those hacks, a lot of times they're being done by Lazarus Group, going to fund North Korean operatives. So what this means is that this is not to disparage DeFi in any way, but it means that there are risks in this space that we need to counteract. I think because the space is still so nascent, because there is still quite a big deal of ignorance in the general public around Web3, around DeFi and crypto, malicious actors are going to take advantage of that. And we need to make sure that we have appropriate measures in place, both the DeFi protocols, law enforcement, financial institutions, everyone in this industry, to help curtail these negative actors and ensure that the amount of crime stays as minimal as possible.
I think I echo a colleague on here. It's going to take user adoption. So how do we figure that out, right? You could build the most elegant blockchain in the world, and if no one uses it, who cares, right? It's just a white paper. So how do we encourage adoption? We see that a lot with NFTs, with financial products, with empowering people. So I think there's that really great balance of creating value. So you have a stake in the game, you get financially rewarded from that, and you get to participate in it. But you have to sort of look at the marketplace, look at all the protocols being built, look at how they're curating their ecosystems, right? How are they encouraging entrepreneurs, startups, dApps? How are they encouraging builders? Because there's sort of two components to consensus, right? There's you stake and you build, and nothing's gonna work if no one builds on this. So that's why these events are great too, because you see even in a market downturn, there's just a lot of great interest. There's people building so many great things. So eventually we'll break through the wall in terms of user adoption. What was that with Web 2? It was platforms like YouTube and marketplaces like Amazon. So what are going to be those Web 3 moments? I think they're probably coming pretty soon.
So the first step, well, could be perhaps making sure that the user interface is friendly and that the people using don't even realize that it's about blockchain, that it's about crypto.
Yeah, that's where education is key. There's a lot of FUD in the marketplace. There's a lot of misconceptions in the media. So once you have like a light bulb moment, like, and I'm sure everyone here has had that moment where you really understand how it works, it just starts making sense from there forward. But to answer your question, it has to be easy. You can't be juggling wallets and worrying about losing a lot of money through copy pasting your keys, right? So the interfaces have to be really well done.
And just a final thought. So you've all kind of touched upon education, right? So what do you think, just a quick final thought from each one of you, what do you think from your kind of personal experience it will take to, for people, or maybe the regulators, especially in case of Chainalysis, to kind of learn this, learn like Web3 and blockchain as quickly as possible and understand what it does and what it doesn't do?
Well, I would just jump in there and say they have to keep an open mind, and they have to encourage entrepreneurs to build in the space, which is what they do. They want people to build. So, you know, as long as they stick to that, I think we'll be okay.
I mean, as important as education is, another factor I'll touch upon is that we kind of just need to make Web3 as big as possible and have entrepreneurs make as many cool projects as possible, to the point that the regulators, the FIs, everyone realize it's just not going away. I think when I joined about 4 years ago at Chainalysis, when I started, there was a bit of a sense amongst some more traditional institutions like, okay, I hope this thing will go away before I retire so I don't have to learn about it. I think if we can show the value in Web3, I think if all these different entrepreneurs, all these cool projects that can come out can show the potential of it, we're already starting to see more traditional institutions coming to us and realizing, okay, this thing isn't going away. Let's try and find a way to work with it instead of against it.
Well, they can start talking to their kids at home. It's very inspiring and educational. They know what they want. They are the real users of Web3. So what do they want? Why doesn't it make sense? Yeah, just ask their kids.
Yeah. And probably a last element is really that if you look at Wi-Fi, for example, nobody really knows how it works, and you don't need to. If you talk to the kids, the younger generation, it's just like internet everywhere. And I think that's where we need to go with Web3. It needs to be that intuitive. There needs to be education, adoption, and then it just works, and nobody really cares if it's a distributed ledger technology, a blockchain, or something else. It's just digital money and kind of a new Web3 experience.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I think the key takeaway from especially that last part is that all of us are in the same boat, and then we need to spread the news, spread the knowledge, and talk to our friends, talk to our kids, and teach them, essentially. And I think time will get us there by the sound of it. It's just that, well, it's all of us to make it happen. So thank you very much.